Good morning and welcome to the Nova District PTA Learning Seminar. We'll give a few seconds for everyone to make sure that they're coming in, and we'll start in just a minute. Okay, great. Looks like we're all set. Good morning again. My name is Jenna White. I'm the FCC PTA Vice President of Communications. I also have a marketing agency called JA Creative, and I'm the outreach chair for Nova District PTA. So glad to see you here this morning. Welcome. I'm going to go ahead now that I've introduced myself and turn off my camera. It just makes the dashboard a little bit easier to manage. My email addresses are on here, and we are recording. The presentation will be posted, and my email address will come up again at the end, or we'll put it in the chat. So let's go ahead and get started.
Yep. Jenna,
Yep.
your camera is on and not your slide.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. We good now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, so this was our welcome slide. Here's my email address, and as I said, it'll come up again, so don't worry if you missed it. And we'll start going into the next slide. And we do have a fairly small group this morning, so I'd like to try to tailor this to what information is most helpful to you. You should have both the chat option and the question option available to you. So before I get started with the slides that I do have created, if you want to think about what things would be most helpful to you, what topic areas or what questions you have, I'd love to go ahead and focus on those in addition to the information that I have prepared. So whether you are struggling with your website or your email communications, or of course social media, which we'll talk about, go ahead and let me know. We can even do a few hands-on things, so I can do some demonstrations for things that might be helpful. So we're just going to start off by touching on PTA branding. And of course, as a national organization, as a membership organization, we're really under national PTA, and it's really beneficial to us if we follow national PTA branding. It really helps people understand immediately that we are part of a larger organization. So let's say, for example, someone's scrolling through social media very quickly, right? We all tend to just swipe, 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 swipe. And so for something to really catch our eye or catch our attention, especially in that quick moment, it's really helpful if your brain connects it with, oh, this is the PTA logo. Oh, this is the PTA color. Oh, this is the PTA font. You know, that can happen instantaneously, just like when we see Coca-Cola or Wendy's or something like that. So a lot of times people like to use other things, you know, something maybe really colorful or something that you think looks great, and that's nice, but then you could be missing out again on the opportunity for people to connect with what you're trying to communicate as being part of PTA. And you know, since we do struggle with members and prospective members, you know, understanding sometimes what we do, right? They say, well, why should I join PTA, or what does PTA really do? So we're not helping ourselves when we don't always make that connection, when we're not really focusing on connecting our work. So if we send home a flyer about bingo night, it might be a really cute flyer, but again, if it doesn't speak to people as being from PTA, you're not helping them connect the dots that this is a PTA program. So branding is really the tool to do that. And so we have a couple ways, couple specific tools to do that you can think about, and that's your logo, fonts, colors, and then photography or imagery is a little bit trickier for us, but we'll touch on that. So starting with your logo, I'd love to hear if everybody is using their PTA logo. So that's your national PTA logo with your school on top and the tagline below. So if you're able to access the chat, please let me know if you are using your PTA logo at your school. You know, typically we inherit all sorts of things. So whatever's been used at your school was likely handed down to you, and that makes total sense. But you do have the opportunity to use your PTA logo. Virginia PTA has a custom logo library available to all of us. So the link is here. You can also go to just vapta.org, and if you type in the search bar logo or logo library, it will come up. So there's an alphabetical listing there of all of the schools, all of the PTAs in Virginia. And you just right click and you can download that file. You just save it typically as a JPEG file, which is a graphic interface file. And then you start inserting it just like you would any other photo or any other file. If for some reason, sometimes you see a logo that might be missing from Virginia PTA, or I had a school email me the other day and it was Pine Springs with an S and it should be Pine Spring. National PTA has a document that you can use. I'll actually slide it into our screen. The link is here. So this is just a simple way that you can take that National PTA logo, you add your name here, and then, like I said, you go ahead and save it. You can save this file and then right-click it to download it. You also have the option to do PTSA, which is really nice if you're a high school, so that you can customize it a little bit. So again, that link is here, and I encourage you, if you're not using your logo, to go ahead and start using the PTA logo to show that you're part of our association. Then next, a really easy branding tool is colors. And PTA recently just updated this visual identity standards quick reference guide. So this is really great. It's a little bit longer of a document. The link is here, but I just cut out the color part for our purposes right now. So when you're dealing with colors, you have a couple different ways that they're expressed. You may be familiar with a PMS color or a Pantone color, which is typically if you might be selecting a color of paint, that's what's on your paint swatch when you go to the paint store. There's also the hex color, which is typically used for digital and online programs or tools. And then the CMYK is the actual breakdown of the 4 primary colors and how they're used. So this is nice because it gives you all of them. It gives you RBG, which is another tool, Pantone, Hex, or CMYK. And so when you're in a program and you select the color, if you see something, usually it'll say custom, and that's where you'll get a box and it'll ask you for one of these. And you simply put in the numbers that are here and you'll get the PTA blue from our main logo. And then these are the expanded colors from the National PTA palette that you may have seen, especially with the new membership materials that came out last year. The graphic, the GIF that flashes through, and each one is a different color. These are all of the colors that they use. And at first it might be something to get used to, but really it actually saves you time, because again, if you sit down, you're creating a flyer or you're creating something on your web page. I don't know if you're still using flyers, but at the elementary school level, we used to do that. If you're creating something for social media, you're gonna have to stop and think, well, where do I start? What colors do I want to use? You don't even have to think about it. You can just go right to these colors, and then it's just a matter of figuring out how to mix them together. If you're really not sure, or you don't feel comfortable kind of working with these colors, just go with blue and white. That's what National PTA is. If you look at the National PTA website, you'll just see that really strong blue and white branding, and that's fine. Simplicity, it can be best. It's really clean. It's a really modern look. I don't think we need a lot of bells and whistles. Sometimes that can be, again, a bit of a distraction from our message. So I just recommend sticking with our National PTA color palette and these tools. And if people want me to go ahead and do a demonstration on how to actually change the colors, I'm happy to do that. Just please put it in the chat or in the question box. And we can do it either in this section or at the end. And then next tool is looking at fonts. We do have quite a bit to work from our National PTA recommendations. So Myriad Pro is the font that they use primarily. That may or may not be a standard font depending on what program or application you're using. So if you can, look for Myriad Pro. You can also likely download a free version and then install it. If that's not something you feel comfortable with, then you have other options as well. Same thing with Minion Pro that may or may not be available to you. So then they did give a whole list of additional fonts to use that are definitely available with things like Microsoft Office. So Arial Bold, I'm using Calibri in this presentation. Calibri Bold, so Calibri Italic. So within that font family, if you use the regular and maybe the bold and the italic, that can give you a little bit of variation to work from if you feel like you need something that will make it look a little different. So again, just go back to these fonts and stick with them, and that will really go a long way. Last is Imagery, and as I said, that's a little bit harder. We don't have, a national library that you can go to and pull images. If we did, that would be fantastic. We don't, so that's really a challenge. So a couple things that I would recommend for that, stock photography, a lot of times programs do come with stock photography, so you can use them that way. You do want to make sure if you're just kind of going out onto the internet and finding things, you might find things that you want, but they're probably copyrighted, and so that can just get to be kind of tricky. So you do want to make sure you're using free photography, things that aren't copyrighted. And then, again, because sometimes we don't have a ton available, it can be challenging to make sure that we're reflecting the demographics of the community so that you're showing diversity in all ways, whether it's gender, race, ability. You'll see in this presentation some great photos that are very diverse and very representative. Some other things you could do for photography, even just maybe take some time and go to your school, even just if you're not able with COVID to go into the building, go on the outside of the school and just kind of create your own mini library and just take some pictures of the school, maybe some things at some interesting angles or some close-ups. Just kind of build your own library. There's nothing wrong with, again, doing something simple and just having a photo of your school as stock photography, maybe a photo of your playground, maybe a photo of the bus in front of the school, whatever it may be. Just again, you want people to immediately know this is about my school. If they have 10 things that they're looking at, again, if it's a piece of paper, if it's a flyer, and they're flipping through them quickly, whatever you can do to make that connection will help. You can also look to see what your school is using, and if they have photos that they often use, you can just right click. If they're online, you can right click and download them and use them yourself. If they have photos that they're using on social media, then those are already available. So oftentimes I will kind of raid other social media feeds when I'm looking for photos, especially if they're about my school district or a specific school, because that means that the principal has made it okay to use them. And then in terms of taking pictures in general, if you're thinking about, is it okay to include people, definitely check with your principal and ask him, what is the policy at the school? How do they approach it? Sometimes in the past where we've had principals that understandingly didn't feel as comfortable, we would take pictures of PTA, maybe it was a PTA, we're selling spirit wear back when we used to be able to do that. The photo would focus on our faces, and then maybe just the backs of heads of students or something like that, or something where it's more of an action shot and you don't see really, it's not focused as much on people's faces, maybe on what they're doing. We used to have a little store at the middle school where students could redeem cards that they got, positive reinforcement cards. They could pick out candy and trade it in for different things. So we would just kind of, the pictures would focus on a close-up of them exchanging their card for their little piece of candy rather than a broader shot showing everybody's faces. So those are just a couple things that you can think about. If you have other things that you do or other suggestions, feel free, please share them with us and with each other. So now let's transition to social media. So why social media? Of course, it's a great communication tool. It's a way to connect the school and the family or the communities. It's a really great tool, especially for our advocacy work. And then again, it's a way to communicate our brand and really not only build our membership, but keep our members, right? So again, if someone joins the PTA, we want them to really understand throughout that school year what that membership is doing for the school and doing for their families. So social media is just really one more tool that we have to use. And of course, it's just such a common and popular one in this day and age, right? So when you're thinking about social media, you want to think about what platforms should we use. So where should we start? So we'll look at a couple of them. So we have Facebook. most popular in terms of how many active users you have does skew now older, which is great because that's our demographic, right? Is people of parenting age. Most people do access them via mobile devices, so that's something to think about in terms of sometimes maybe how the image displays or just how people are receiving that information. Twitter, on the other hand, also has tons of users, 330 million users. Instagram is growing tremendously, and that would be a great place if you're a PTSA and you really want to also engage with students. And maybe it's a way to get students to engage with you. Maybe you have some students who are part of the PTSA, maybe they're on your communications committee, and maybe they kind of are responsible for or have a large role in your Instagram feed or your Instagram account. That could be a great role for them. So again, just going a little bit more into Facebook. As we said, it's really the top choice for parents. And so some things you can do with it, if you're not aware, is it's great for events because that sharing aspect, that viral aspect, if you see other people who say they're going to an event, it might encourage people to go. You can ask your parents and your members to really help you promote things by asking them to share events, by asking them to indicate that they're coming to events, again, for that visibility. It's a great way to answer questions from parents, and so you can constantly kind of put out that message of, you know, what questions do you have, or what are your thoughts on this, or what are you seeing about that, maybe a certain policy or something that's happening at your school. It's a way to do that two-way communication, especially now, of course, since we're not able to see each other as much in person and have that conversation, thinking about how we can take that conversation online. And then creating that visibility of everything that you're doing at the school. And with social media, especially, it's a great way. You can think about showing people what you're doing instead of telling them. Nobody wants to read something that's several paragraphs long. So it's a way to just constantly be giving a steady drip of showing people what you do. This is what it looks like. This, again, with the pictures, with short text, with kind of bulleted information that comes through as a post. We mentioned advocacy already, and then it's a great way to connect, if you're a local unit, with what's happening at the council level, the district level, the state level, and national PTA. Some of us, if we're here on a Saturday morning, we might follow a lot of these pages, but your sort of average PTA parent is probably not following all of these levels. So it's a way that you can kind of curate all the PTA information and get it out to parents. I didn't even know about all of these other levels of PTA until my oldest son was into high school, because I just wasn't active outside of my school. I had no idea of all these other things that happened in PTA. And I was very interested in them, but no one had ever really shared them with me before. So social media is a great way to do that. So setting up a Facebook page, I don't want to take the time to go through all of these because I don't know if that's what you're looking for or not. But if you are, you can come back to the recording and just go through step by step how to do it. Facebook also has, they're really good. I mean, they want you, of course, to be on the page. They want you to be active. So they do take you through it step by step. It might feel a little intimidating at first if you're new to Facebook, or if you're new to using it as a page as opposed to an individual, but they definitely will walk you through it step by step. They'll want you to do as many points of engagement as possible in terms of providing as much information as possible and making your page as engaging as possible. You can also set it up so that whatever you post on Facebook automatically goes to Instagram. So in that sense, it can be sort of a 2-for-1 if you just want to have a presence on both pages, but you don't have the time to tailor information or other people to help you. At least you can get your presence started and get it growing over time through Facebook linking to Instagram. You can post to both at one time. So some keys to success for Facebook. depending on how your board is set up, you might have a communications person. Some PTAs, their president is primarily responsible for social media pages, or it could be several of you. That makes sense as well in terms of kind of keeping up with the workload. Also in terms of kind of keeping an eye on the page, seeing what's happening there, making sure that you're responding right away. So you can really engage your community and ask them to help you grow your social media because it's also, not only a reflection on the PTA, but on the school itself. So let's say I'm moving to an area, I would likely check out the school's PTA feed and the school's feed and the PTA's feed. So it's a way that community can really kind of make your school shine. And if you approach it that way, maybe people would be more likely to engage. So you can ask them to like a post, to comment on a post. Anything that is that sort of engagement really helps your page get more visible through the Facebook algorithm, which really highlights pages that have more interaction. So asking people, you always want to remind people, hey, please like our posts. Please just give us a few comments, even if it's something really simple, because that really does make a difference in the algorithm. And then you want to make sure that you're posting regularly. You don't want to just set up the page and leave it there. You initially, especially if you're new to it, you might think about something realistic might be 2 times a week. And it might not be so much about the quantity per week, but just doing it consistently. So there's nothing wrong with posting even once a week, so long as you make sure you're really doing it every week. You don't want to have big gaps of, a month or 2 in your posts, or you don't want to go to a page and see, oh, nobody's posted on this page for the past 6 months. And you can sit down and plan those out in advance. You can look at what's going on, over the next month or seasonally, and just kind of brainstorm. Sometimes when you sit down and open the page, it's like, oh my gosh, what am I going to say in the moment when you're looking at that post box. But when you take a step back, you realize, just jot down those ideas. There's plenty that you can share. We talked a little bit about Facebook events. With Facebook, people can also send you private messages. So you can set up an auto response that lets people know we'll get back to you, but you do want to make sure that within your board or within your leadership, you know who's checking that or who's receiving notifications and who's answering. And then if you're getting negative feedback, you don't want to delete it. You don't want to necessarily just ignore it. You can just address it in a matter-of-fact way and try to engage in a conversation. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. There's a great resource that goes into a lot more detail about addressing negative feedback. Some tips for getting that engagement. So using graphics. So that could be anything from a simple photo, as we talked about, to something that you create that might be more text-based. So a big graphic with, large letters, advocacy alert and a megaphone or something like that. Facebook will, if you have something really short, they'll kind of create it as a graphic for you. And so that's another option as well. But when people are scrolling, having some sort of image or link is what makes it more visible. And if it's just text, it's much more easy to just scroll right past. You want to go through and follow other pages. So it could be other schools and other PTAs in your area. All of those levels of PTA that we mentioned. It could be your local elected officials. It could be community organizations, but you want to follow all of them. You can see what they're doing, and then you can also interact with their pages. You also want to like other posts as your page. So again, that's a way for you to interact with the community using emojis, using hashtags. You can tag other pages and other locations. And if these are things that people would like to see a how-to, I'm happy to do that. Just let us know here in the chat or the questions. And then reshare, as we said, just sharing things from other levels of PTA is a great way to get information out there. All of these things add up to that engagement that Facebook is really looking for. And the more engaged you are, the more that they will prioritize your content so other people see it. There's some other tools with Facebook. You could do a Facebook group. So if you've ever done like an email group, somewhat similar, It could be for your PTA members. We have in Fairfax County Council PTA, we have a Facebook group for leaders, and it's a great way where people can ask each other questions. They don't need to ask the council oftentimes, they need to ask each other, and they have wonderful sharing of ideas. So when you set up your Facebook group, you can ask a few questions and require people to answer them so you can know who these people are, make sure it's nobody who might be not even living in this area who might be spamming you. Unfortunately, we do have people who seem to have the time to come on and share comments that aren't really relevant to our work. So you can control that, and you can determine who you admit to the group and who you don't. You have control over that. And then in terms of moderating the group, that's something you can assign. It could be a great role for somebody who doesn't have time to come to a lot of board meetings or planning meetings. It's something they can just sprinkle throughout their day. And then Facebook Live now, of course, with our virtual world is a great option. If you are having an in-person meeting, you could do both. You could offer a Facebook Live version of the meeting, and then of course whoever's there in person would be seeing it that way. And then with Facebook Live, what's nice is it's automatically captured, and so people can go back at any time and see it. It's automatically archived. You don't have to record it and download a file and then upload it somewhere else. It all happens seamlessly on Facebook Live. And then Twitter, if you're not familiar with Twitter, it's a way to get out information in shorter bites. So the maximum length is 280 characters. Everything is resized a little bit different in terms of graphics, but you can, if you just put in like social media graphics guide, it'll tell you you want a photo to be this many pixels, you want an image to be this way. So similar to Facebook, you can think about advocacy, you can follow other people, you can interact with them, you can retweet from all of these groups. Similarly, setting up your Twitter account, it's quite easy. If you do have more than one social media profile, you can link one to the other. And you can also include your website and make sure that people can get to your website if they find you first on Twitter. Similar to Facebook again, you're really looking for engagement. You can inform people, you can really push your events. You can show support for teachers and students through just short little statements. You can try to mobilize students into action. You are, again, more likely to have students on Twitter than you are on Facebook, and then retweet and like other tweets from the community or other schools. You see a lot of individual teachers now that have Twitter feeds. So within one school, within our middle school, we probably had 40 or 50 different Twitter accounts between our teachers, between different programs. Our after-school program had one, our music department had one, our PE teachers had one, our English department had one. So that there's plenty of other profiles out there to engage with on Twitter. And then one thing you really want to think about on social media is if you're speaking as the PTA versus speaking as an individual. So just like in real life, if you're at another community event or something, you just want to think about what hat you're wearing. Are you wearing your PTA leadership hat? And if you are, you want to make sure that you're nonpartisan, that you're non-political, that you're following the PTA advocacy in terms of what things we support and how we support them. If you're not within those parameters, then you want to make sure you're speaking, or in this case, you're acting on PTA as an individual. So that would be your own personal Facebook page. So if you see something, even if it's on National PTA, but you have an opinion that is really your personal opinion, make sure you're switching over to your personal account, and you can definitely engage in that way, but you wouldn't want to be speaking as the PTA president or as a PTA officer. And good advice here at the bottom, if you're in doubt, if you're not sure, then interact or post or engage as an individual rather than speaking on behalf of PTA. Again, just like in real life, thinking about, would you be doing this as PTA or as yourself as an individual? So here's some resources, and here's the one I mentioned in terms of dealing with negative comments. This is a toolkit from National PTA where social media and advocacy collide. And you can see the different sections here. There's additional information on getting started, how to build awareness, more information about Facebook and Twitter, dealing with negative comments, and then how to interact with elected or appointed officials. So this is, it's not too long, it's manageable, but it does have a little bit more detailed information than what we have time for today. And then if you're looking for this, these links at the bottom are logo packs for the platform. So if you're looking for the little Facebook icon to put on your website or to put on an email communication, so you can say, follow us on Facebook, you want to put that little icon, here's where you can find them. And there's different versions. You know, it could be the thumbs up for the like graphic that you could download. It could be follow us on Facebook, find us on Twitter, whatever the case may be. These are provided from the company, from Facebook, from Instagram, from Twitter, so you can find them and download them here. And then switching away from social media for a few minutes, in terms of other communication tools, wanted to see, you know, what questions people might have or what they are or aren't using, and we can talk about some of these things. Of course, email newsletters are still very typical. Some folks use things like Constant Contact or MailChimp. Some schools or school divisions might have programs or platforms that they'll let you use as a PTA to send out communications. Some PTAs just do an old-fashioned email list that they'll send out through whatever email provider they use, Google, AOL, whatever Outreach or Outlook, excuse me, whatever you use, that's perfectly fine if that works for you. And typically that's more manageable for a smaller group in terms of deliverability. So we can come back to those if people have questions or comments. Your email signature line is something that can be often overlooked, but is a great communication tool. And so that's simply just going into your email settings, and rather than just maybe having your name and your title, you can go ahead and have your school logo, your PTA logo, include links to your website, include links to your social media pages. If you do have an email newsletter, you want to always include how to subscribe to that email newsletter. And again, it's that consistency. So every time you send out an email, even if it's just somebody, an assistant principal or somebody, maybe it's just that great reminder for them to engage, or for them to think about how can they support PTA. Maybe they realize, oh, I should really send this out to staff, or I should really recommend that we engage in these sorts of ways. And then websites, was curious to know if folks on here all have websites. If you don't have a website, how you feel about your website, if it's something that you feel is working for you and easy to use, if you're looking for a different platform, if you're looking for advice on where to go, what to do. Those are questions that we can definitely answer as well. And actually, let's go through, I'll just show you going back to the signature line since we have some time. Here we go. So I'll just show you here. So this is just my Gmail. We use Gmail for our Google accounts for our PTA. So it's pretty simple, but here's our FCC PTA logo and my title. And then here's a lot of links. So sign up for our newsletter. Here's our website. Here's our social media. And then here's links to 2 of our programs. You can also go in, if you have a big event, if you have a big fall event or a big back to school event, and put a little blurb, put a little 2 sentences even, or 3 sentences and a link to sign up for the program. This is really advertising space for you. This is marketing space. This is a communications tool that you have. So you can use it however you want. You can change it as frequently as you want. You could talk about something that's happening that month. You could talk about an advocacy issue. You could put your next PTA meeting in here. You can make it bigger. You could do all sorts of things. You could insert a picture from your last PTA meeting. Again, this is a great space for everybody to use. And then while we're here, maybe I'll just go ahead and show you quickly what we talked about earlier in terms of using color and things. So I'll just go ahead. Actually, I'll type in a quick sentence. So you can go ahead and highlight your text. On Google, on Gmail, you want to come down here where you have your toolbar. If you are bolding or italicizing, usually there's something for text color. So you have background color and text color. Here actually, so I don't have the ability to fully customize it. So here I would just want to match it as closely as possible. So I'm sort of looking for, and I did use sort of a darker blue. And so depending on your monitor, you know, it might not be as easy to tell if that's blue or black, but as you get into more content, and if you're using other colors, then that's definitely a little bit more noticeable. So then let's go ahead and look a Word document, then how to do the same thing. So we put in our text, and so here we want to highlight it, go ahead and enlarge it. So same thing here, you have a highlight color. We don't want to highlight it, we want to change the actual color. We're going to go to our font color. So these are, we have our theme colors and our standard colors, so we want to go to more colors because we want to customize it. So, and then here we're still looking for custom. And then from here, now we have our different options. I mentioned there's different types of color input. So here we have RGB. So we're going to go back to our color guide. I'm going to actually pull it up here. I had it open. It looks like I accidentally closed it. So we're just going to go to that color palette guide that I pulled up before on from National PTA, that resource, and we're going to look up our RGB colors. And we're going to put them in. Here we go. I'll pull this over here so we can see it. So let's do that really cool PTA green that you may have seen that has a nice pop. So we're going to do the red. Oh, when I click, I lose it. So I'm going to move it to my other screen. But the red is 120. The G or the green from my guide is 190. And you can see now the colors are already starting to show up. When I put in this last color, it's going to get to just that right shade of green. So I'm going to click on New, click on OK, and there's my green. Okay, and we're already in Calibri. Let's do Arial Black. Let's just make it a little bit bigger so you can see it. So this might look a little similar, again, to some of the membership materials and graphics that you've seen. And now what's nice too is that color should be saved when we go back in, so recent colors. So a lot of times what I'll do, if I'm starting a new document or something, I'll just go in and add all of these colors, and then they'll show up under my standard colors, and I'll sort of have my color palette. Yeah, so once I've added those, all of them would show up here, and I just ignore the rest. Same thing if you're doing something on an email or on a website, just highlight it, look for colors, look for custom, however it's set up, just keep clicking on custom until you get something where you can input colors from that guide, and then go ahead and select your font. So let's go back to our presentation. So here is my information again. Sorry, Debbie. And then I want to see what questions or what other things would be helpful to show people.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jenna. That was excellent. We did have one question that kind of referred back to Twitter. It said, how would I know all of the teachers' Twitter handles?
Mm-hmm. So it would be great, it would be fun if the school, you know, principal kind of curated all of those and provided them to you. The best thing to do is to go to the school's feed, and usually they will be tagging them or liking them as well. So you can ask, you know, usually I would find them from my own child's teachers for that year, but over time I would just sort of find my way to them. Unless somebody has collected all of them for you, it would take a little bit of time to find them. But once you, if you have an active, if Twitter's really active at your school on the staff side, they'll constantly be liking each other, tagging each other, sharing things from each other. And then just, if you see @ at Mrs. White English class, it'll be highlighted. So you just click on it and then click follow. The other thing is, as you're following things from a particular school or a particular community, let's say you're following a lot of things on Falls Church lacrosse or something, any social media platform is going to try to push it to the extreme. So they're going to start recommending other pages. So after you've done a few of them, and if you start interacting with things at your school level, Twitter's going to start recommending ones to you, and they'll start with the ones that are more active. So once you get in there, just kind of keep working with it. You'll see you'll need to go after some information, but a lot of information Twitter's going to push at you because they want to keep you on as long as possible. They want to keep you as engaged as possible. So they will start recommending pages for you as well. Same with Facebook. They'll start recommending pages once they see what you like. And if you're interacting with other pages, they'll see, oh, this person is, or this page is looking for elementary school pages in Arlington or something like that. So just get in there, start doing stuff, and it will start building up momentum, building out steam.
Okay, thanks, Jenna. Do you want, we, may have some more questions. If you guys want to raise your hand, raise your hand. We'll unmute you to ask a question at this time.
Sure, and I see another follow-up question related. What do you recommend us doing besides retweeting their messages? So that's a great question. You can retweet it, but you can also comment and maybe tie it to your work. So trying to think of a quick example. SEPTA, we just had a meeting last night. We have our Fairfax County Special Ed PTA, and they're really focusing on literacy. So again, let's say it's an English teacher and they're tweeting a picture or something about a lesson that they did on writing your story or writing your narrative, writing your biography. And let's say there's something that ties in with the literacy program that we're advocating. It's a great way to just say something like, great work. This is a great, this is an example of literacy, best practices in literacy using X program or something. Or it doesn't have to be anything that complicated. It could just be as simple as, way to go, Mr. Smith. We really appreciate you and like having you at this school. It could be as simple as, it could be a question. It could be kind of something to engage in a conversation. It could be, what did students think of that activity? Let's say back in the day when we had field trips. It could be, how did students like that field trip? Or what feedback did you get? Or how did you come up with this idea? There's a big push now on social emotional learning. Hopefully not only in response to COVID, because we have certainly other things going on with our students besides just COVID. And before COVID, social emotional learning was very important. But let's say, and social emotional learning should be embedded throughout the curriculum, not just a separate lesson. So let's say a math teacher was doing a really innovative lesson or strategy involving social emotional learning. You could just reinforce that. You could just say social emotional learning is something we're really focusing on as a PTA. And we're so excited to see this happening in our school. So anything along those lines, a question, a comment, a way to go, tying it to something else, just a simple appreciation, all of those things are a great place to start. And then, also as you're on Twitter, you'll get to see you'll start seeing what other people are doing, or on Facebook. Just, you don't have to comment until you feel comfortable. You can start off by just following and seeing what everybody else is kind of doing and getting a feel for it. So follow your council PTA, see what Virginia PTA is doing, see what national PTA is doing, look at some other Facebook groups. There's a national PTA local leader group. So that's a great way to see what people are doing. It's a great way to ask questions. So definitely also look and see what other people are doing.
And Jenna, I did want to bring up, because you did cover a bit about setting up websites and, you know, communicating newsletters, that type of um, advocacy work for the members. We do want to remind our PTA leaders that Virginia PTA offers the free Member Hub account, which when you do access it, you are able to send out newsletters. They've really improved their newsletter templates, and it will go to your members, as well as you can, there's a way to create a website. I haven't really explored that, but they do provide that opportunity for you, because we do know websites are expensive. And not expensive, but you know, you have to purchase them some, and those some may be free. But anyway, I just wanted to share that real quick.
Yeah, that's a great recommendation. Member Hub also, Google Sites has some limited functionality, or some limited offerings. You can't do, you know, huge websites with a lot of bells and whistles, but if you don't have a website at all, it's a great first start, and you probably don't need anything super advanced, especially if you are able to use social media. That could be your easier way than putting a lot of content on a website. We had another question about photos. Great question. If a teacher has posted something, is it okay to post it? I would just double check with your principal and see how they feel about it, or if there's any school policies, or see what your district has. I know in Fairfax County, parents can opt out of having any photography of their children, but you'd have to talk to your principal in terms of how that's actually executed. How would you know what students at your school have that? How would you know who's in the photo? That gets pretty complicated. You know, it could be maybe in the future you show pictures of kids in their shirts and it's cropped in a way that it doesn't look odd, but it's not showing their faces. Maybe that's something that you might feel a little bit more comfortable. Maybe it's a cute shot of kids walking down the hall if its shirt has something on the front and the back, but definitely check with the principal. I mean, technically, if it's on social media, it's out there, it's available to the public. So in theory, you can use it. Whether or not that's something that, you know, people feel comfortable with might be a different issue. And you could also talk to your membership, you know, start at a board meeting and say, as parents of this school, do you feel comfortable with that? Or did you know, maybe they weren't even aware that pictures or teachers are posting pictures, or that the principal is posting pictures. So I'd have a conversation at your board and at your board meeting, and then maybe have a conversation at your general membership meeting, and make sure your principal knows about it ahead of time so they're not caught off guard. Maybe the principal didn't fully realize what the teacher was doing. So it could be a great way to start a conversation at your school between staff, leadership, and families in terms of what's happening, how people feel about it, and what's ideal, or where you'd like to be. And we have another question. How do you suggest managing the information flow so we aren't repeating the same things? Yes. Or is it okay to take a shotgun approach and assume different people get information from different platforms? That's a great question in terms of, so it's really asking what information should we send out, right? And what channels? And then also adding that layer of what information should we be repeating, because everybody comes to PTA and they want us to be their advertising wing, right? They're like, can you send this out to families? They assume that we can kind of instantly reach families. I know in Fairfax County, we struggle with even, you know, we don't even have every current PTA president's email address. And people are like, can you send this to all the presidents? It's like, well, we're still working on that for our own information. But again, it's a really good question. I think you have to kind of think about the needs of your community. So for me, when people say, for example, you should resend stuff out from Fairfax County. Well, first I look at how good of a job did Fairfax County do in sending it out. If they've really covered a lot of their bases and sent it out pretty extensively, even though it might be something that's really important, I am a little bit hesitant to send it out because if people just think of us as duplicating the same information, they're not going to read our information, right? And maybe it's a better use of our communication channel to remind people to sign up for school information. So maybe they need to know how to sign up for the school district's newsletters, or maybe they need to know that the school principal puts a lot of things on Facebook. So again, rather than repeating it, we're empowering them with the information of how to do it themselves. But then there's other times when it certainly is relevant to amplify information. So there's no hard and fast rule. You just have to kind of get a feel for it. It's definitely, marketing and communications are definitely more of an art than a science. There's no one formula of always do this. Just as you're out there communicating, try to get a feel for it, try to get a feel for what resonates. So with your email newsletters, one of the nice things about using like Constant Contact or something versus just sending an email, you can see who's opening the emails, you can see who's clicking on the links. So over time, if you see, you know, these things aren't really going anywhere, people aren't reading the emails, they're not clicking on those links, then that will help you shift over time where to move your efforts. Same thing on social media. As things, hopefully you'll see a little bit more engagement on some things. You know, we're not talking about tons of engagement, right? We're not we're not a household brand or something. Sorry, that's our smoke detector. Hold on, I'm gonna mute myself.
Hey, thanks, Jenna. We'll give her a minute. I know how those smoke detectors can take a while to go off. Yeah, so and if anyone else has a question, I think we've answered. I did post into the chat the links for Virginia PTA for Member Hub, but for some reason, I'm not seeing my response in chat. So give me a hands up if somebody sees it. But you can go to Virginia PTA and just check under membership, and it'll tell you the benefits of Member Hub, and then the links to actually submit. You just need to submit your president and treasurer information, and then there will be an account set up for you. It's quite easy. So I'll give Jenna another minute or so. Did anyone else have any more questions that we can help you with today?
Hi, Debbie, I'm back, just so people know. And definitely feel free to email me if you have questions or specific questions, especially because websites can be really tricky if you have a need for that or know of other schools in your area. That's something that we're really trying to strengthen, is helping people get at least a basic website up and out there in the community, so they do have that sort of presence. So always feel free to reach out to us. And I know some people are starting to come in for the next presentation. So I want to thank you so much. Sorry about my smoke detector going off, but I know I don't need to change my batteries. And thank you so much for coming. Thank you for your questions, and good luck with all of your PTA communications.
Hey, Jenna, thank you so much for presenting this presentation. It was excellent. And we really, value the information that you bring to the table in your extensive experience, both professionally and through PTA. And that was some great tips. I'm Debbie Kilpatrick. I'm the Assistant District Director. Joining us to help moderate today is Hamid Manur, who is the Director. And we have Jason Morgan, who is our Secretary Treasurer. And we are going to transition now to the next presentation. We've got a few minutes if you need to take a quick break. We'll start promptly at 11 as we had advertised that. But that will be our local PTA and student programs presentation. So in the chat, like I said, if you have any follow-up questions, Hamid's email and my email is listed. And so just send it to us, and we will be able to forward it to Jenna or directly contact her, or to other PTA leaders that your question may need to be directed to. So I think, are just going to take a quick pause. We did have one more question. Let me check here. Okay, you guys were all telling me that the answer was there, so that's excellent. All right. Jason, I'll turn it over to you. Jason is also the Fairfax County Council Reflections Chair. So he's, you know, wears multiple hats. So thanks, Jason.
Thank you, Debbie. And yes, we'll wait one more minute so that we start at 11 o'clock in the morning. It is a pleasure being here this morning. And thank you, Jenna, for that presentation. I think we all enjoyed it. We learned some things. Even those of us who have managed these pages before, I think we all picked up something new. So thank you so much for doing that. Hi, Michael.
Good morning, Jason. I'm trying to figure out, how do I do this? I'm still doing my tutorial, learning how to use this new format, but I think I got it for us.
Awesome. Well, it is 11 a.m. I think it's time for us to get started. This is the program on local PTA and student programs. You've got me, Jason Morgan. Well, first, let's just a nice reminder. What's the PTA mission? To make every child's potential a reality by engaging and empowering families and communities to advocate for all children. So a lot of what we're going to see here has to do with, well, how do you engage those families? How do you help use them to make every child's potential a reality? So let's find out. Got me here. I am the Secretary Treasurer at the Nova District PTA, Reflections Chair. This is my second year doing this at the Fairfax County Council PTA. And I've been around a little bit longer than that. I actually served as Budget Chair. So I moved a little bit from the advocacy side more to the engagement side in the last year. And we have Michael. Michael, do you want to introduce yourself quickly?
Absolutely. Michael Wellen here. I live in Williamsburg. I've been working with PTA for years and years and years. Started out, as a PTA president when I was a teacher back in the late 70s. So I've been in PTA for a long time. Now I work with the state on as a district director and at our local unit level as well. And I work on the programs committee for national.
Yeah, and that last bit, that working on the programs committee for national, if you have any questions or any comments, this is the gentleman to talk to about national PTA programs. This is our direct line. Now, this is supposed to be somewhat interactive, so if you have any questions or comments as we go along, please just bring them up in chat or raise your hand. We've got Debbie here. We also have Hamid, who is the Nova District PTA District Director. They'll be helping monitoring chat and questions. So they can interrupt and let us know that we need to recognize someone or just ask a question. So don't be shy. What are we going to learn?
I just want to say thank you for both of you being here, and thank you all the parents and all the leaders that are here today spending time with us this morning. This tells us that you really care about your community and your kids, and that's why you're here to learn and serve them better. So we are here for you. We are here to help you out. And again, thank you, all the presenters, Jenna, Jason, Michael, thank you so much. And of course, Debbie always is there, helping everyone. So Debbie, thank you as well.
Thank you, Hamid. So today we're going to learn a little bit about PTA reflections, some additional PTA program options, including national PTA program options. We'll provide some tips for planning. It says for next year, but it's actually for this year, this school year. And we'll point out some support and resources that may help you as you move throughout the year. Remember, our goal here is to help you ensure your PTA is prepared to plan programs for this year and in the future with a variety of resources and support at each level of PTA.
Jason, one thing I want to add too is we're always looking to the future. So yeah, even if we're talking about this year, think about future leaders and getting folks ready for next year and so on and so forth. So develop your legacy by being a PTA leader that's developing other leaders as well, because that's really imperative at this point.
For sure. So Michael, do you want to speak to the power of PTA?
Absolutely, right. As a PTA leader, you offer programming that educates, empowers families. You facilitate connections between families and teachers. You create a bridge between home and school life, and you teach the community about healthy lifestyles, internet safety, literacy, STEM, STEAM, plus, and more. And we'll discuss some of those, of course, as we go through this presentation.
Thank you. So this is really for what you need to think about your program goals. First of all, is your PTA in good standing, or does it have a plan to have its good standing reinstated? This is really important because you can be in no longer in good standing and still have local programs, but a lot of the programs that you may want your PTA to engage in, they require your PTA be in good standing. And this is good outside of that. It's good because these help you stay legal. These help you avoid a lot of issues, things like getting your financial review. Great way to ensure that you don't have something like, a rogue officer who started to embezzle funds, or, at least mismanage them. So just getting into good standing is really important for a host of reasons, but one of them is so you can participate in all the programs that PTA offers. Think about what programs your PTA would like to host this year. Think about some of the challenges you may be facing, what resources you need. If you're starting a new program, well, what outcomes are you hoping to achieve? And if there's a program that for whatever reason you don't want to continue, if you are thinking about discontinuing an existing program, what are the consequences? What are you losing in doing that? This can happen for a number of reasons. You might lose a champion and not have a good transition. And Michael, you were talking about thinking to the future. You always want to be thinking who can step into this role next year. Who can, if your champion's children graduate and they no longer wants to help your school out in that particular program, who's going to step in, or if the person moves away. So having some kind of a transition plan is really important, because even popular programs can fall to the wayside just very easily in an all volunteer system like the PTA. Do you have any thoughts, Michael?
Absolutely, Jason, I agree. And I think the other thing too is we sometimes forget that we are all volunteers, and so things come up. People change, military families move. I mean, all those things can happen, and you just have to be aware of the fact that when those things happen, you move on, and we can't kind of dwell in the past and think, well, when so-and-so did it last year, it was great. Whoever's doing it this year, they're going to do a great job, and we'll find ways to support them. So I mean, kind of keeping that whole really positive attitude about something when something does change or someone does leave, because it's going to happen. And so you may get more work for a while, but that's okay too, because you'll find someone else that you can mentor or you can bring along with you to kind of help you kind of do something, kind of do something together. And that's always that's very rewarding too, when you get a team that you can really kind of work on and count on, can depend on.
Excellent. All right, so we touched up on getting your PTA into good standing, or making sure that you're in good standing. So there are a number of requirements. You should have already turned in your executive board contacts. You can do that through Member Hub. There are some other ways of doing it, but Member Hub is the way that is being really pushed as a good way of making sure you're doing everything. But if you haven't gotten those in, try and fix it now. Get those in. That way, the Virginia PTA, Nova District PTA, county, your council PTA, they know who to reach out to if there are issues. So that's number one, and that should have been done, but if you haven't done it, do it. Get those members in.
Yeah, and Member Hub is very user friendly. I mean, for an old man like me who is not tech savvy, I can get on Member Hub and kind of pull things up pretty quickly and really understand things. So don't be afraid to try it out or get your folks to try it, because once you get into it, there's so many things you can do with it, and they're so supportive. I mean, when you need help, Member Hub, there's a contact you can get on there, and they respond within 24 hours. I mean, so it's a very, very user friendly, nice piece to really kind of make this kind of streamline the process for you, to make things easier, which is always important.
Mm-hmm. Get your members in. So as soon as a member renews, get that name in, get the dues in. So that's very important. You have a certain number of members you need to have. So make sure that you submit those on a rolling basis. Don't wait until November 1st to turn them in. Just turn them in as you get them. The bylaws organizational structure form, that is new in Virginia. That's under, you can find that in the local bylaws page of the Virginia PTA website. Instead of having to go through the process of trying to wordsmith your bylaws every 5 years, which is, it is a challenging process. I've taught how to do that, and eyes just roll to the back of the heads, and it is complicated. You have to set up a bylaws committee, you got to get your members. Instead, you identify what is special about your PTA. So the bylaws, there's a set of uniform bylaws now in Virginia. You identify what's particular about your PTA, what are your dues, what kind of officer roles, elected roles do you have, just a number of small things that you would expect to vary from PTA to PTA. Go through, identify what you already have, get your stamp of approval from your members, preferably at your first meeting, but get those in by November 15th. And it's just I think it's 1, maybe 2 pages. It's very short, and it won't change much from year to year, but that is the new standard that Virginia PTA is expecting. And it really, after the first year, after you've got it, it should be much easier to work with going forward. So make sure you get that in. That way you know what your organizational structure is, and Virginia PTA can verify that it meets all the requirements as well. Now it says audit. It's not called the audit anymore. It's called a financial review, but functionally you're having a committee that's checked the records, the financial records, checked other things as well. It's not all financial, checking to make sure that you've got your minutes for the last year, that you have contact information. If there is something missing, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't finish the review. It just means that you report, well, we didn't have this. We turned in, we'll be voting on it soon in the Fairfax County Council PTA, a financial review, and we noted that we couldn't find the officers list. We had actually a list of officers at the PTA's level, at the local units level, but for some reason it excluded the past officers from the Fairfax County Council PTA. It was just the reports weren't quite what we needed, and we just said, okay, it's not there, but it was fine. We submitted it and made recommendations. We made a few other recommendations as well. So, but get that in, get that done, get that turned in. Taxes, that one you do need to do, and usually for most PTAs it's just a postcard. Even if you've actually had 1 year where you had a lot of high income, I helped answer a question where someone's, we got a whole bunch of income. I think it was like a grant or something, or a bit one-time donation, and I checked, and it was like, oh, it's okay. Whether you have to go from postcard to a more complicated report, it actually depended on average, like 3-year averages. So, but if you do, if you got the grant, find someone to help you. It's not going to be, for most PTAs, it's just a postcard, but you have to get it in. If you're not getting those in, you can lose your status with the IRS, and can be very difficult to fix that. So that's very important in terms of compliance. And get your insurance policy. You are doing things where there is potential risk, even especially when going back to in-person events, there are risks. So make sure you've got your insurance policy and you've turned it in through Member Hub so that you will be in good standing. Michael, anything else on this?
Again, it sounds kind of daunting when you see it and hear it like that, but clearly one of the things that's really important is you realize that those things can be fairly well taken care of. There are people at the state level, at the district level, and the local level to help you with all those things as well. So don't be afraid to reach out if there's anything you have hesitancy about, or you don't understand, or you want to do an audit fest or whatever. That's why it's so important that we always really commit to really supporting each other, and that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing right now. But clearly, believe me, that goes way beyond this. Folks that are, like Hamid and Debbie are always there to kind of make sure that we're kind of staying in line, staying together, and doing the right thing. So, don't fear this. I mean, obviously, it's like I said, we got to make sure we check them all off and get our ducks in a row. But you have people that will help make it happen. So, always know that we can move forward and get it done.
I'm going to throw one more plug as to why you want to make sure in good standing, and that's you want to be able to send someone to you want to send delegates to the convention, the state convention. Your PTA's got to be in good standing to be eligible to send delegates. So make sure that you're represented in the Virginia PTA, get in good standing, and send people to the convention. So let's look at some of the Virginia PTA programs that are available. We're going to talk about reflections. You can see all the due dates there. We'll bring those up again later. Scholarship program and impact awards. So reflections, that's the one I am most familiar with. There are 6 categories. Actually, I don't know why special arts is listed as a category here, because it's not a category, it's a division. So there are 6 categories: dance choreography, film production, literature, music composition, photography, and visual arts. And there are 5 divisions. Anyone pre-K all the way through 2nd grade, 3rd grade through 5th grade, that's intermediate, 6th grade through 8th, that's middle, 9th through 12th, that's senior, and then special artists. So a special artist would be someone who is like on an individual development plan, who is getting that additional support. Special artists can enter as special artists, or they can instead enter in at the grade level at which the student functions. So you could have a student who is a special artist decide, instead of competing in the special artist division, compete, say, in the intermediate division, depending on the student's functional level. The theme this year is I will change the world by ... And it's always open-ended, because the idea is to get students to express themselves, to find something, some spark in themselves, and develop confidence by sharing it with their school, with the county, division, state, nation, but with the world. And it really is an empowering thing. At the Fairfax County Council PTA, for example, we made sure to recognize everyone who was sent up to the county level, and we encourage the schools, local programs to do so as well, to really recognize their students.
And when you think about it, and when you think about schools, we always think about arts, athletics, academics. These categories cover all 3 of those, because some of our students are gifted in band, some of our students are gifted athletes, some of our students gifted, academically. So this really gives every child a chance to show a certain gift that they have that they bring to the table, which is really special.
And these categories of art are just that cover quite a range. So we have dance choreography, that's solo ensemble works. We've had some really interesting intersections, learned a lot about just how diverse our region is based on especially the dance choreography. These are entries that can be no more than 5 minutes. They could be no more than a full gigabyte in size. And you can see the requirements there: AVI, MP4, common formats. It is possible to have, like it says, it can have an ensemble. There still needs to be an identified choreographer. That's the student who would be recognized for the competition. But if that student dances or has other, I think even has others do the dance, it's the choreographer who gets the credit for purposes of reflections. Film production. So this can be all over the place: animation, narration, narrative, documentary, experimental, or media presentation. The entrant has to be the screenwriter, cinematographer, editor, and producer, and all background music has to be cited on the entry form. Again, it's 5 minutes max. Doesn't have to be a full 5 minutes, but that's the max, up to a gigabyte in size with common formats. PowerPoint is not allowed. The student can use it to create the work. That's okay. I can do some really neat things with PowerPoint, some animations, or even if it's just a narrative with images coming on and fading off or whatever, that's okay. But it has to be converted into one of these formats. So they're not, judges aren't supposed, we're not expecting judges to open up a huge PowerPoint that, with concern about things like macroviruses or whatever on their system. And the other reason I suspect they don't allow PowerPoint is it may not render the same on different systems. So converting it to an MP4 or an AVI would ensure that the experience is consistent from system to system. And these are some really fascinating works as well. Again, all over the place. Literature, so fiction or nonfiction, prose, poetry, reflective essay, screenplay, playwriting, narrative, short story. These it's 2,000 words maximum, but they're not always that long. Most of them aren't. They can be handwritten or typed. It does have to be as a PDF. We got some that were in Word at the county level and just converted them. We helped out in that regard. Actually got, I think, 1 or 2 as images, and again, it wasn't a big deal. We convert them, but as it goes up, they have to be in the right format, and it's best if they come in the right format to begin with. One interesting thing is the entry doesn't have to be in English as long as you have an interpretation, that's a translation that's added to it, that's in English. So if you have students who are English language learners who can communicate more effectively in another language and can write in another language, that's okay, as long as you get that translation to go with the entry. So this is not meant to be an English only project. Music composition. These are entries, again, 5 minutes up to a gigabyte, but you don't, the formats though are MP3, WAV, ACC, they're sound entries. I think we got some videos, I think I extracted those out, just the sound part, in order to ensure that they met the requirements. We do need, for middle and high school only, need notation. We need the score or tablature. If we don't have that, then it can't move forward. And again, that was something I had to ask for. The entrant has to be the composer. Doesn't necessarily have to be the performer. So as long as it's the student composed the work, that's what matters. And I'm going to add one other thing. We actually had some entries who recognized that they were doing multiple works. Maybe had a video of it playing, or maybe some animation or something to go with it. Had the lyrics serving as a literature entry, as a poetry, and the music composition itself. And we took them, if they won in that category, that was fine. So there are ways for students who are creating multimedia experiences to potentially get recognized in multiple categories. So just a thought.
And that's really important that students know that too, because obviously if students know they can actually enter, something in photography, something in, in dance and choreography. I mean, it kind of makes them kind of think out of the box as well, to really know that they could win multiple awards for actually winning in more than one category.
Mm-hmm. So photography, got some very creative. By the way, all these entries, these are from Northern Virginia. we decided, we had a presentation. It had some standard ones. We don't know where they were from, but we decided let's highlight some of the things that came out of Northern Virginia last year. So photography, these are single print or digital images. Actually, they can be print in the local programs, but as far as I know, all of the councils in Northern Virginia are only accepting works digitally. We have to submit them up digitally to Nova District PTA, and it is a lot easier to get for judges to be able to just go in, open up the files from their homes. It really, and we don't have to worry about losing works. It makes things so much easier to run the program. So even though there's a note here about the print requirements, probably not applicable. So just make sure that the dimensions, that they're at least 640 by 960 pixels, 300 DPI, can be a JPEG, JPEG, GIF or GIF, or PNG. PNG is a lossless format, so is GIF. So, the students hopefully will pick the right format depending on what they're taking a photograph of. Most likely JPEG will be the format that they'll want to use. Visual arts, again, these will be generally submitted as digitally, and they can be all sorts of things. They can be architectural drawings, models, ceramics, collages, computer generated images and graphics, crafts, drawings, fashion, clothes and jewelry, fiberworks, mixed media, painting, printmaking, and sculpture. This is kind of the catch-all, and it is the most popular category for works and reflections. We will get a lot more here than in any other category. It does include sculpture. So, well, if you have a sculpture, you take 3 images from 3 different angles to give a sense of the work in a way that we did have some paintings, and they wanted to show the texture of the painting and got different photographs. Probably not necessary in that case, but a good but just a few images from different angles are useful. Just want to highlight that the Northern Virginia District PTA, we had a lot of really strong entries last year. And we're recognized, so a lot of our students were recognized. The one in the top left, that was a student from Rachel Carson Middle School who got the Outstanding Interpretation Award in that division for visual arts. So we have, but it's not, the recognition isn't what's important, it's the participation. So we really encourage your students to participate and for you to provide access to this program at your PTAs, because all the students get something out of this.
And if you can bring it up at your school as well, when you have your executive board meetings, when you have staff and the principal there, because many times you'll have the art teacher or the English teacher will actually use the prompts as a way of getting their class engaged in activities, and if they can get more entries that way and get more kids involved that way. So it's a nice way, again, of promoting the connection between school and PTAs.
Mm-hmm. So for the due dates, so the one thing that's unfortunate about reflections is everything's right there at the beginning of the year. So, and the reason why is because there are all these different levels where works need to be judged, need to be considered, and it's a lot of work. It requires mobilizing a lot of volunteers, and it gets more difficult. This is one where it can get more difficult the higher up you go because of the volume of entries that have to be considered. We don't have the national PTA's due date on here, but we do have the Virginia's due date, which is January 14th. That drives the Northern Virginia district's due date, which is December 4th, which drives the councils. At Fairfax County, we have the earliest, which is at the end of this month, And it's just because we have a large volume of works we have to have judged that to deal with. The other two councils have theirs a little bit later, November 11th. If you don't have a program, there's still time to start advertising. I don't know what's at the Alexandria and Arlington. At the Fairfax County, we actually offer a form and a repository. I know I've got after this, I have to go fix just a couple of issues with one or two repositories, but for the most part, I've been able to open up a free repository for the local units, and that allows you to start a program, you advertise, submit your program here, and that drives how many volunteers are needed. So what we've seen is if it's the first year, it's not a lot of interest, there might not be that many students who submit entries. So if you have one entry in a category and division, that's your winner. You don't have to need a lot of volunteers. You just needed to accept it and then turn it over to your council. On the other hand, if you have a lot of submissions, then the fact that you have all those submissions will help encourage parents or teachers, whomever, to be more active and actually step up to volunteer. And you don't need a whole lot. I mean, if you've got 50 entries, you can probably handle judging with just a few judges, really. It doesn't take that long once you get your judges comfortable with, okay, I'm going to score, we'll use those to rank, and we'll figure that out. It's just getting comfortable with it. You don't have to have professional artists judge these. You just have to have people who can see, hear, and are willing to express a opinion, give it a score. So.
And again, many times your staff, like at school, will be, they're the subject area experts. Many times they'll want to step up and help as well with the judging piece, and you can coordinate that with other folks. But certainly, yeah, the more folks you get, and if you start doing that now to make sure you have the judges ready when you get the submissions, will certainly help you out as make the process go quickly.
And just one quick tip before we move on: you don't necessarily have to judge every work the same number of times. We make sure that when we're doing for the county council that we get everything judged at least twice. But we throw more judges at works that are getting high scores out of those rounds. That way we can rank with more precision the entries that seem to be strongest, that are more likely to do well at the state and national level. And we don't worry too much if the initial rounds, if some things don't seem as competitive, we don't use more volunteer time to reinforce that. We just show our appreciation for the entry, but we move on from that. So all right, so scholarships, we don't have a lot of information. We did see that the Virginia PTA has mentioned that there should be a scholarship program next year, but right now the only thing they're showing is the information from last year, the winners of 2021. So we're hoping that Virginia will continue to make this happen. Keep an eye out. You can expect that there would probably be a deadline, maybe as early as March, maybe as late as April, but keep an eye out, because this is an opportunity for students to show that their academic prowess, and their commitment to engagement, etc. So it's definitely something just to keep an eye out for. We hope we'll see that again 2022.
Yeah, and certainly there's nothing more important than recognizing our students. I mean, so clearly anything that can recognize our students and give them some kind, and obviously this is a way of actually helping them move on to their future. We want to make sure we try to support those things as well. So certainly, you certainly know that we're all pushing for this. We certainly want to make this happen again next year, and so certainly our goal is to make it happen in the future as well.
Yeah. And speaking of recognition, likely will be, there always seems to be, and I don't think that they'll get rid of it this year, the impact awards. So this is recognizing schools, leaders, volunteers, whole number of categories. And our thought, we want you to think about this throughout the year. Look for that volunteer of the year. Who's out there making a difference? Doesn't have to be someone who's necessarily logging just lots and lots of hours. It doesn't have to be an officer or a committee chair, but look for what's the impact of what you're seeing of people out there. There should be, we would like to see a lot of nominations for these. Your local unit of excellence, is there, think about how your PTA might compete for this award. Look for your principal, superintendents, others who are important, strong family school partners who are keys to student success. Look for those. There are the membership awards. I believe those are words that you don't have to, you're not really competing with anyone else. You're competing with yourself for having increased your membership. I don't know all the categories, but that's something you can achieve. And then Child Advocate of the Year. So looking at your outstanding youth or individual PTA advocates, elected officials, local unit, council, or district PTAs that have done great advocacy work. So, to support academic success, health, and welfare of students. So again, keep an eye out for potential nominees for these, and be prepared in the spring to write them up and show that recognition.
And that's what's really important. We find many times people don't take the time to just submit the one. Usually it's a one or two pager that actually recommends folks. So yeah, please find somebody that's kind of in charge of celebrating your membership and celebrating these people that really are impacting our students and our schools. So I mean, it's not, again, it just takes a minute, but it makes such a difference in how people view the PTA and certainly want to support PTA. So it's certainly worth the time to submit an entry.
Mm-hmm. So let's look ahead, Michael. I think this is going to be where you stand strong.
Look into the future. Let's hope so. Thanks, Jason. Yeah. So obviously that, right now we're going through a kind of a unique time, as we all know, and so PTA is really adapting our program format. So there certainly is, we're still doing some things in person. We're still doing some things at home like we are right now. Some of them asynchronous, some of them synchronous. So certainly looking at a way to make things, some in real time, really having things like this where it's going to be taped and people can watch it, so it's more self-paced, and you can do some things that are tech-free by having more in-person kinds of things as well. So we're always, we're trying to kind of go with the flow and meet the needs of a kind of a changing time. Certainly one of the biggest thing about National PTA is they want the programs to certainly be all of those things, everything you see there: informative, engaging, guiding, awesome, fun. We want the programs to provide access to engaging, educational, and fun opportunities that inspire, recognize, and impact all students and their families. And I think that you'll see as we go through these that the whole idea is to get more people involved, to really make sure that you're celebrating what your students are doing, you're celebrating what your PTAs are doing, and to make PTA a fun activity or a really engaging piece for our families, so that they want to be a part of this and they understand how we're advocating for every child that we come in contact with. PTA Connected provides PTAs with turnkey programs on digital wellness, online safety, internet security, digital citizenship, and access and equity. And so there were grants that were available last month. Hopefully you all submitted one. It's a way of getting at least $1,000 to your PTA to do some really special things, so that each of our PTAs can do some really innovative kinds of things and looking at different ways to address all of these issues that, again, are affecting our children. Your local unit can utilize this www.pta.org or create your own event. There's Healthy Lifestyles, which support healthy school meals, advocating for more physical education activities in schools, establishing school wellness activities, modeling positive health behavior for your PTA meetings and fundraisers. I think Jenna mentioned that earlier in the workshop preceding this, and certainly participate in National PTA's Healthy Lifestyle Month. All those things are available on these websites. Jason?
And this is important. With a full year at home, everyone's been a little bit more not everyone, but a lot of have become much more sedentary. That lack of access to recess, to access to friends, really do need to think about advocating, working for more physical activity, physical education in schools, finding ways to kind of get back into that habit, because healthy body can help, for in terms of academic performance and just personal well-being. So
Absolutely, and PTAs often get involved in things like field days and school picnics and things like that. So yeah, anything to get kids outside. Many of our local PTAs do things like sponsoring gardens or outdoor learning spaces. So again, anything your PTA can do to kind of get children up, moving, and engaged in physical activity is certainly something that will help us all. And certainly, yes, I mean, back to the health, health behaviors. Obviously, it's been very hard on our children to be isolated. So the more we can get kids involved and engaged, I mean, all those things will make us a better society.
yeah.
Obviously, I'm sure you all know what STEM is. Getting students involved in math and science, technology. So initiative increases access to STEM education careers, especially among underrepresented youth, by developing, evaluating, and sharing effective ways to engage families in STEM experiences. And we do a lot of these. I mean, there's different things where you can have students come to school and build robots. You can have children come to school and make goop or whatever. They really do a lot of things to really get kids to bring their families to the table, and in the cafeteria or the auditorium to just kind of work together in small groups to really make sure that families understand that math and science are not something that's always separate. It can be engaged in really fun, engaging ways to get kind of hands-on manipulatives in front of students, and the kids like that. So, and it also really kind of helps the child develop his or her, interest in learning more about a certain activity and so on. So, all we can do to get our families at the table to be involved with these things, that really kind of helps folks that sometimes they are maybe hesitant to be a part of that. So, and obviously getting our underrepresented youth and our families of color and so on in, all those things really kind of help us all get to the table to really kind of work together and promote a healthy lifestyle.
And if you're one of those advocates who say, no, it should be STEAM, not STEM, well, just pair reflections as your A for your arts with the STEM programs as well, and there you've got your STEAM.
There you go. Full steam ahead, Jason, full steam ahead. I'm sure you're all familiar with family reading experiences, and I think we kind of really like this picture here. It just shows a dad with his child there. But parents take part in the fun with their kids, and they leave the event with a deeper understanding of the simple ways they can support literacy. National PTA has partnered with Reading is Fundamental to provide literacy expertise and activities to host an engaging and effective family reading experience. And again, you can do these things around as well. You can certainly buy books for your children. Jason put a little book, a little library there that somebody made. We have one of those at our local elementary school at Norge Elementary. There's one of those that someone built out there. If you have a creative parent that's a carpenter, if that mom or dad can build you one of those, and you at the school just agree that it's okay to put it there. It's an easy way to get books into the hands of children. They can bring one, take one, or they can just take them all, and you can have folks bring them and volunteer and donate some more. But again, the whole idea is to get books in front of children so that children really understand. They kind of get away from the constant exposure to screen time and have some time to really sit with mom and dad, or mom or dad, or their guardian or whoever, or their neighbor, and just sit down and read and enjoy some print media. And that's something that we really want to promote as best we can.
For sure. This is important.
Go ahead, Jason. You want to? I guess you had a lead in there, Jason.
I just wanted to say this is important.
Yep.
Michael, I think, can tell you more about the program, but the original deadline for enrolling in the School of Excellence program was yesterday. It has been extended until October 15th. So Michael, maybe you can explain a little bit more about what School of Excellence program is.
Absolutely. So the National PTA School of Excellence program, a recognition program that supports and celebrates partnerships between PTAs and schools to enrich the educational experience and to overall well-being for our students. By enrolling in the program, your PTA and your school administrators are making a year-long commitment in identifying and implementing an action plan for school improvement based on PTA's national standards for family school partnerships and transformative family engagement. And what the really important part of this is, it really just, it's more of a blueprint and a guideline to help you really plan your year with your administration and your school. So, and again, as we were talking about earlier, it's nice when you get celebrated. So this is a way of really celebrating your school and getting your school recognized for doing something where they're bringing the parents with the staff together to really doing something that really brings the PTA to make it one. And The school where I'm the president last year, Ward Hill High School, we went through the process. We're a school of excellence this year. Again, it was just a way of getting everybody at the table to talk about, and you do a pre and post survey. So you start the school year off with some things where you want to ask the parents about things like, is it a welcoming environment when you come in, or are things written in different languages? All those all those questions. You do it once in the beginning of the year, once at the end of the year, and you see how you've grown during the school year. And it's a nice way too of kind of really affirming, what growth has occurred over the year. And like I say, more importantly, it's a way of just having a conversation about what your school's doing and how the PTA can work to support the school program. So I see it more as a blueprint to a school year, and again, a way of sitting down with your staff and your executive board and your members to talk about ways to really make a difference in your community. So that's again, it's a real nice program. It's a way of being, again, another way of celebrating what PTAs are doing. And yeah, since it was extended, you still have time. It's only October 2nd, so, and it doesn't take that long to actually enroll. So that's another thing. It's a real quick thing. And actually, even the process at the end of the year, you write a summary of what your school has accomplished based on what your survey tells you. So it's best to have a person that's got chairperson of this initiative, but clearly it doesn't take a lot of time, and it really helps promote a real cohesive environment for your PTA.
So Michael, you've had the most experience with this, so tell me, is the School of Excellence program, is that for struggling PTAs? Is that for PTAs that are really doing well, or is that for all PTAs?
Is a great question, Jason. And he didn't live that one. It's for every PTA. So yeah, certainly it's a way of getting a struggling PTA to kind of come together and talk about issues, but it's also a way of celebrating what a successful PTA has been doing. So it's for any PTA. It doesn't take a lot of time. Like I said, go to I would certainly suggest you go to the website, look at it, and understand what they're asking you to do. But it's really a way of documenting your journey, and I think you'll find it's a really positive way of doing that.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael. Oh, now looking a little bit down the road.
In the future. Yep.
Not that long, but
No,
February.
it's not. And certainly we're hoping we can do this where everybody's welcome at school. Take your family to school week, February 14th to 18th. Kind of like the old American Education Week, where you want to get parents engaged and parents involved. It celebrates National PTA's long history of engaging families by providing PTAs with ideas and resources to host family engagement opportunities during National PTA's Take Your Family to School Week. And this again is, you can have reading activities. You'll have families can be readers during that time. Mom and dad or neighbors, anybody, grandparents come to school. They can watch what their kids are doing. They can be a part of that. Most teachers find ways to do something special for the parents that are there that day, so that you're actually engaged, not just looking, so you're actually involved. And it's, again, a way of getting our families and so on at school, so the families actually at school to see what the kids are doing. Nice way of celebrating that we're partners working together with our children.
Yes.
Always remembering that parents are the first teachers. Personal reflection.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, so we're not going to have a real discussion about this, but this is just something for you to think about in terms of how you're going to plan your coming year. So we want you to think about what was your past programs, what was successful and unsuccessful. Well, why? It's always good to think, why were they successful? What made it unsuccessful? What happened?
And we often hear, I mean, I'm sure you're hearing it today, or from your group, there's always the lack of volunteers is an issue, and it's always going to be an issue. And these parents aren't engaged, these parents aren't engaged. So our role is to somehow find a way to really kind of inspire those folks to be engaged, to really make sure that people see that we're excited about what we're doing, that we like what we're doing, and that we really feel we're making a difference with our children, with our school. So usually when people see other folks doing something they really enjoy, they want to do it as well, kind of the old Tom Sawyer thing. So I would certainly encourage you to make sure that you're always reaching out to folks and talking about what your PTA is doing, and focusing on what's working. I mean, obviously, like Jason said, you need to see what didn't work so you can build on that and make it so it may work next time, or just throw it out altogether. But the bottom line is, focus on the positive. If you can really sit down and get folks to really believe that, here's a way of really making a difference for our kids, I mean, you'll find people want to jump together and really do that. And right now, because we're being so resourceful and doing different, approaching things different ways because of our current situation, health-wise, I mean, they see that we're resilient, that we really find ways to make it work. And we find a way to kind of, end around to get to, reach our goal without maybe that direct line we've had in the past. So, it's so important to be positive and to always have that really positive outlook. I think it makes a huge difference.
Mm-hmm. And it's not that a program doesn't necessarily completely successful or completely unsuccessful. I know that I was really slow in getting awards out. For reflections last year, I had one parent who was very upset, and I acknowledged, said, "You're right. I should have gotten these out months ago." And then I got them all out. But what am I doing this year? I'll make a commitment. It's like this; these have to be done during the winter break. Cannot put it off. Cannot put this behind, even though it's not a fun task, because of the volume of letters and ribbons and everything that has to go up. But I will make sure that that happens this year, because then it will be an even more successful program. So, and also just think about, your approach to planning. What do you prioritize in the planning process? Good planning makes for successful programs.
Absolutely. And again, remember, things get in the way with families, things get in the way with people's, situations changing. Always be cognizant of that, and always be willing to say, okay, well, you couldn't do it. We'll find somebody maybe help you out and get it done. So yeah, not dwelling on that. What did?
Or cut back a little bit. Sometimes you can cut back as well on things.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we'll give some tips here for deciding what to do and how to do it.
Yeah.
Well, when you are planning your programs, the first thing is, what do you need? What do you need at your school? Do you need to really encourage STEM at your school? Do you need to focus on building leadership skills among your parents? Maybe you need some kind of training to get them more engaged as PTA members.
Yep.
Maybe.
And all these things, it's a good, this is a nice, almost like a start for your School of Excellence application, by the way, because when you start doing these things, you're looking at what your schools, you're identifying those needs, you're finding ways to meet those needs. And sometimes you can do those things through the grants programs of National PTA or from your locals, as Jason just said. But the whole idea of really doing that collaboration piece is a natural part of that whole process. So if you can tie it in, feel free to, but otherwise just kind of focus on these things, because this will really kind of help you move forward with what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Digital citizenship, maybe a lot of schools in Fairfax County, for example, have gone one-to-one a lot faster. Actually, that's probably the case in most of Northern Virginia, that students who didn't have access to school computers before now have them. And that may mean that you want a digital citizenship type of a program and there are groups out there who will come and talk with you and give really good programs, a lot of good resources. I think National PTA probably has some good resources on things like that.
We had a lady from the FBI that came and talked to our parents about, kind of a smart talk with talking about digital safety and how you can actually make sure that children are making wise decisions. So yeah, there are so many community organizations that really have folks that are dedicated to doing that kind of thing. So make sure you kind of, tap into those resources, because the more those free services you can get, certainly the less cost is to your PTA as you move forward.
Yeah. So listen to your families, find out what it is that you really need, and then find those programs, including those at the National PTA, and collaborate, talk with your principals, teacher, counselors, find out how to move forward in a way that avoids overlap of that, or that finds some synergy, finds where you can work together. And also look for related community organizations. There are plenty out there.
Yeah, many times the Rotary, Lions Club, they're all looking for ways to kind of be involved with schools as well, so you can kind of pull some of those folks in to work with you on as you're moving and making your plans.
Yeah. So integrate family management practices. So try and be inclusive. Embrace and value diverse perspectives, not just, so when you look for leadership, try and get people with different perspectives. Individualize, try and get your program so that they work for individuals. So Reflections, for example, has the special artist advertise that. Make it clear that individual students who may not fit in the normal divisions can have options. Work with the educational system itself, so integrate with the educational system, and try and be impactful. Empower the families to support their child's success. And so when you
and
start.
try to make sure you're trying to be aware of the fact that you want your group to be diverse as well. You want to make sure that your PTA executive board represents your school. So if you can find ways to bring in maybe some underrepresented populations in your school district or in your school area or in your school itself, try to find ways to really engage all families. Every family that's represented in your school. The more representation you have, the more meaningful that the whole PTA practice will be for your school.
Mm-hmm. So again, consider the School of Excellence program. That will actually help you get the training support needed to really embrace these best practices and receive recognition. Communicate how you PTA. So connect your programming to families' needs, demonstrate how they're responsive to community. Tell your story. So again, going back to the social media and other forms of online communications, this is a great way to really communicate what your PTA does.
And we're all different. So you want to solve that difference. I mean, obviously every school's different, every staff's different, the volunteers you work with are all different. So yeah, try to find ways to kind of make it special for you and how your particular group can do it, because that's what's so important.
Mm-hmm. So just again, another personal reflection. Think about what you can do to find your most impactful way of communicating with your school and community. What did you learn about national PTA programming? Hopefully you've learned something from this. What are you excited to try next year, and or change next year? Let's see. So we know that there have been a lot of difficulties faced especially with COVID-19, and it can be very difficult. There are families that don't have good internet device access, and it is difficult. PTAs have found ways to be resilient and adapt, even if it's just making sure to observe social distancing practices, wearing masks, etc., while still having a presence.
PTAs did things like pass out backpacks, at the curb. They did food drives and so on. PTAs really did a wonderful job last year of trying to find a way to make it work for kids in that really, really difficult environment we lived in. So, kudos to all the PTAs out there that are doing these things and the ones that are continuing to do these things. But it's so wonderful that they've been able to adapt to the current situation and still be successful. And we've lost some members, which is the other thing we got to push for too, is membership. Make sure you're trying to find ways to increase our membership back to the goals the numbers we had before COVID, because some folks got disengaged. We need to re-engage them.
Yeah, and there's a question here saying, well, we can't host a meet and greet inside the school premises. Can we host events outside the property in parks, etc.? You may first ask, well, if we can't go inside the building, would it be okay if you've got a field that's open, if we provide instructions on how to maintain safety? Your school might actually allow that. But if it's another park, you are a separate organization. So if you get a reservation over at one of the community parks, that's okay as well. And if you can do it on school grounds outside, that's still great. We had an ice cream social. They had a DJ. We had free ice cream, and just being outside really reduced the risk considerably. People were mostly wearing masks. The kids were a little harder to control, but it was still much safer and still allowed for that sense of community. So there are options out there. Oops.
Yep, and just making sure you're working with your school administration to find out what makes sense to them, what's working for them, because you want to make sure, again, you always want to make sure that we're working in concert, not in separate silos.
And maybe it's just you do it by different grades coming in at different times, just to keep everyone's more spaced out to allow for more room. Do think about wellness. This has been very tough since March of 2020. It's been very hard on children to not have access to friends, and their children who move into a new school district, and you hear about it, but it's still, you have to recognize, and it's not always, children don't always express themselves as well as you'd hope, that they may in fact be suffering and not really be telling you. Parents and administrators and teachers have all had a difficult time as well. So show appreciation for what everyone's going through, and just help each other, be there for each other, and focus on wellness as an aspect of what you can do for your school community.
Absolutely.
I think I'm okay now. And continue getting used to using tools, online tools. I seem to provide for more inclusion than less inclusion on balance. Having access now, if you can do things hybrid, for example, that would be even better for ultimate inclusivity. But having your more programs that are online, that's going to be the normal for a while, and if not indefinitely. So learn these tools.
You guys, there have been positives with this, obviously, but students that are sick now can Zoom in, or they can be at school, but even when they're not in school. So I mean, think of trying to find ways to do the learning from what's happened over the past year and a half in a positive way, because there have been some good things that have come from this, in as far as education, how to kind of extended education into the home, such as what we're doing right now.
So do look through the resources that are available from National PTA. There are a ton of things. If you do not have a profile on the National PTA website, get one so that you can have access to these resources. And these are in both English and Spanish, so that's really useful for local communities. Not everything that gets generated at the state, county, district level will be in Spanish, or will be in anything other than English, but you can use Google Translate to get a reasonable translation out there. But do get that profile built in. Do reach out to your council, district, state leaders, and even national PTA staff. They're there to help you with what kind of programming might work for you guys. What are your community needs? How do you solve problems? How do you connect with PTAs like that? The Facebook page for best practices. Great way to help PTAs help each other. Learn how to advocate for your community.
And there's nothing more important than that, than advocating for our children. So always make sure that's always front and center of PTA, parent, teacher, advocate, because obviously we want to advocate for our parents, advocate for our teachers. That makes our schools better. So always kind of keep that A in there, because obviously that's so vital to our success as a unit.
Yeah, advocating for all children is very important.
Absolutely.
And it begins, ends with you. When families become engaged, students succeed. When students succeed, schools succeed. When schools succeed, communities succeed. And when communities succeed, you succeed.
Absolutely.
So it comes around right back to you, the success. So we want to say thank you. You can contact the programs chair for the Nova District PTA. Her email address is there, and we also have the VP programs for the Virginia PTA. But I'm available. It's not on here, but I'm available at treasurer@novadistrictpta.org or reflections@fccpta.org. And Michael, I don't know if you wanted to.
Absolutely, I'm always available. I use my personal email address. It's michaelcan@aol.com. That's how old I am, AOL. MyChaelkan@aol.com, and I'll put it in the chat there before I come.
Yes. Hey, can I just jump in and just say thank you both for such great information and very detailed, and you explained everything to a novice, which is great, and also to the experienced, program chairs that may be on the call today. But yes, Jason, if you could add your email into the chat so people can capture it, would be great. But as I put in the beginning of the chat, anyone who would like to reach out to Hamid or myself, we will certainly direct your request onto the right people, such as Michael or Jason. And we really appreciate everybody coming out on a Saturday morning. For those who couldn't attend but did register, and for those who registered, you'll receive a follow-up recording which will be great. And we will eventually post those to our YouTube channel as well. I did mention in the chat, which we didn't cover in the programs, but Nova District PTA also offers awards. And we do that in the springtime, and that will be based on local units, activities, our volunteers, STEM or STEAM awards. So, keep a lookout for that. We'll post something on our website, and of course, we'll put it in our newsletters that go out at the beginning of each month. So, does anybody else have any questions? We can unmute you if you would like to. I have several questions, but I think they've all been answered. But if anybody else, you just raise your hand, and if you have a question you would like to ask, we can certainly open up your microphone and let you ask that question to these experts here with us today.
I'm not seeing one, Debbie, so if we just say thank you all for being here, or for watching, if you're watching later, thank you so much.
And thank you all again. Remember, it's PTAs are successful because of you. I mean, it's every person that's watching this or a part of this. I mean, you are what makes PTA works, and we want to thank you all for what you're volunteering and what you do to help our children.
All right, thank you guys very much. Have a great rest of the week and weekend.